My name is Liana Carter, and I am 34 years old. I am the mother of two young children, Noah and Elsie, who are only 4 and 6 years old. We live in a small house on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. Life was never supposed to turn out this way. Just over a year ago, my husband, Daniel, was still alive, laughing loudly in the kitchen, making pancakes every Sunday morning while the kids fought over who got the first one. He was a police officer, a brave man who believed helping others was more important than anything else. One rainy night, he responded to a call about a robbery in progress, and he never came back home. When I received the call from the hospital, I remember my hands shaking so badly that I dropped my phone on the floor. The doctor said they tried everything, but Daniel's injuries were too severe. In one moment, my world turned silent, and the future I thought I had disappeared completely. After Daniel died, everything became heavier. Grief followed me everywhere, like a shadow I could not escape. But I didn't have time to collapse because my children still needed their mother. Every morning, I woke up exhausted, but forced myself to smile so they would not feel the sadness swallowing me from the inside. Bills began stacking on the kitchen counter. Hospital bills, mortgage payments, school supplies, groceries, and every envelope felt like another reminder that life does not pause just because your heart is broken. I worked as a freelance editor from home, taking whatever projects I could find online. Some nights I stayed awake until sunrise, typing with tired eyes, while my children slept quietly in the next room. Even through all of this, I continued sending money to my parents every single month. For nearly 5 years, I had transferred $1,800 regularly to help them maintain their comfortable retirement lifestyle in Arizona. They traveled often, went to concerts, and bought expensive furniture. And every time they thanked me, I believed I was doing the right thing because family was supposed to support one another. Everything changed on a cold winter evening when I suddenly felt a deep, sharp pain in my lower abdomen while preparing dinner. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion or hunger, but the pain quickly became unbearable. I dropped the spoon I was holding and leaned against the counter, struggling to breathe. Noah looked at me with wide eyes and asked if I was okay, and Elsie started crying because she had never seen me like that before. I tried to stay calm for them, but the pain kept spreading until I could no longer stand upright. I called emergency services, and within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed me to the hospital, while my children were taken along, holding tightly onto their small backpacks. Inside the emergency room, doctors moved quickly, speaking words I barely understood. After several tests, a doctor sat beside me with a serious expression and explained that I had internal bleeding and needed emergency surgery. Hearing those words made my chest feel tight with fear, not because I was worried about myself, but because I kept thinking about my children sitting alone in the waiting area. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and called my parents. I believed that, despite everything, they would come when I truly needed them. My mother answered the video call after several rings, her face appearing on the screen with an irritated expression instead of concern. I told her everything: the pain, the surgery, the fear that something could go wrong, and asked if they could come immediately to stay with Noah and Elsie while I was in surgery. For a moment, there was silence, and I waited, hoping to hear comfort or reassurance. Instead, my father spoke from the background, his voice calm but cold, saying they had tickets for a luxury theater show they had been planning for months and could not cancel it at the last minute. My mother added that I should hire a babysitter instead of expecting them to change their plans. Those words hit me harder than the pain in my body. I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was hearing, feeling as though the people who raised me were suddenly strangers. Tears filled my eyes, but I tried not to cry because my children were watching me. A nurse standing nearby noticed my distress and gently asked if there was anyone else who could help. I shook my head slowly because I realized in that moment how alone I truly was. For years, I had sacrificed my own comfort to support my parents, believing it was my duty as a daughter. Yet when I needed them most, they chose entertainment over family. The nurse, whose name was Rebecca, spoke kindly and told me she would find someone trustworthy to stay with my children during my surgery. Her calm voice and warm presence gave me a sense of safety I hadn't felt in months. Before being taken into the operating room, I opened my banking application and stared at the automatic transfer scheduled to send money to my parents the following morning. My finger hovered over the screen for several seconds before I pressed cancel. It was the first time I had ever chosen myself instead of them, and even though my heart pounded with fear, I felt a strange sense of relief. The surgery lasted several hours, and when I woke up, my body felt meek, but my mind felt clearer than it had in years. Rebecca informed me that her cousin had stayed with Noah and Elsie overnight and cared for them as if they were their own. Hearing that a stranger had shown more kindness than my own parents made me emotional in ways I could not explain. Over the next few days in the hospital, my phone filled with messages from my parents, but none of them asked how I was feeling or whether the surgery had been successful. Instead, they demanded to know why their monthly payment had not arrived. That realization changed something deep inside me. I stopped responding to their calls and focused entirely on healing and rebuilding my life. When I returned home, recovery was slow and painful, but my determination grew stronger each day. I began taking on more editing projects and later started writing short memorial stories for families who had lost loved ones. Those small stories became popular because people connected with the emotions behind them. Word spread online, and soon more clients reached out, asking to create personalized memory books. What began as a simple side project slowly turned into a stable business that provided enough income to support my children without relying on anyone else. Meanwhile, my parents' situation began to collapse. Without my financial support, they struggled to maintain their expensive lifestyle. They called repeatedly, leaving messages filled with desperation and anger, blaming me for their financial troubles. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for saying no. Months later, I received a message from my younger brother explaining that our parents had lost their vacation home and were forced to sell many of their belongings. Reading those words stirred mixed emotions inside me: sadness for what they had become and strength for what I had survived. By that time, my life had changed in ways I never imagined. Noah and Elsie were happier, playing freely in our small backyard, laughing in ways that filled our home with warmth again. I realized that my responsibility was not to fix the mistakes of others, but to protect the future of my children. 1 year after my surgery, I sat on our porch watching the sunset while my children chased each other across the grass. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace instead of fear. Looking back, I understand now that sometimes the hardest moments reveal the truth about the people around us. I lost a husband, faced illness, and discovered betrayal from the very people I trusted most. Yet through all that pain, I found strength I never knew I had. I built a new life from nothing but determination and love for my children. And now, every night when I tuck Noah and Elsie into bed, I remind them of something I learned through my darkest days: that love should never feel like a sacrifice without a return, and that true family is not defined by blood, but by the people who stand beside you when you need them the most.